So friends, I just did something totally different for this presentation today. So I invite you to ask me questions, just cobble together. I've been doing a lot of thinking about the changing landscape within schools. I know you have been doing lots of thinking about embedding digital citizenship and media literacy, and have had some powerful guest speakers. So I just put together a few ideas, and I think what I'm looking at now is, how do we as educators model this? I think this is kind of the direction I'm going. But I'd love to be able to have a conversation with any of the ideas that I share, just to prompt my thinking a little bit further. So thank you for having me, Dean. And this is a question that began sort of my whole journey, right? What social media are you on, and what will I learn about you if I go there? And my daughter was asked this, but my daughter is now just finishing her master's, right? So it was so long ago. To me, it was so foreign that someone would ask this question. But that's really, I mean, everyone is being asked this question in job interviews, or being asked for their usernames. But I would invite you to just write down right now, what social media are you on? And what's one thing I would learn about you if I go there, just so I get to know you a little bit. And if you're not on any social media, then say that too. Okay, thank you, Lisa. So what would I learn about you if I went to your TikTok account? Anything? LinkedIn? You would learn about my job. Okay, thank you. I don't know how to say your name. If you want to unmute. I'm off everything, but kept my Facebook profile. Thank you, Jenny.
You would learn that my son is a goalie and we might come up sometimes, and it's really funny.
Perfect. So Jenny, you would learn that I still like to buy and sell on Facebook. Okay, great. If my Instagram was public, you would see that my life revolves around my son. Oh, nice. Okay. Dean, are you still on? Have you held on to Twitter, or are you off that now?
I still have my account there. I don't really post there. I see people deleting it, and I'm a little hesitant to do that because I've had enough problem with people stealing my identity. I don't need another one. So I'm
Yeah, someone said just lock it, and that way you won't have to worry about it.
Yeah.
And learn I love sports. Joshua, you and my husband should follow one another on Twitter. That's all he used to do on Twitter. Instagram private, teacher, mama for. Went to Italy recently. We can talk about that. I was in Italy all summer. Beautiful. All right, thank you. I do not post almost ever. Beautiful. Okay, so it looks like for the most part, many of us are on social media for personal reasons. Some of us not at all. But it looks like, family, and, we keep things private. And so today I'm going to ask you to think about a few things differently, maybe. And then what impact might this have on our students in the classroom? Okay. So a million years ago, I met a guy named George Couros, and he talked about digital leadership as using the vast reach of technology, especially social media, to improve the lives, well-being, and circumstances of others. And at the time, this was 2013, I was like, pardon? That doesn't even make sense to me. But it's so interesting how I've sort of kept that idea within me alive. And it actually is what prompted myself and my friend Lee Castle, who came up with who founded the Digital Human Library, to come up with something called the Global Student Chat. It's had several iterations. It was the Global Ed Student Chat, and now we use the hashtag Global Student Chat. And I actually just left those student leaders as they were talking today. So it is something that I started, 7 years ago with this desire to do something differently that still continues today. So I'm just going to show you it's a really bad video because I created it, not the kids, but here it is.
Welcome everyone on the panel and those joining us from around the globe for the Global Student Challenge.
The Global Student Challenge is a student-led initiative connecting students worldwide around topics that matter to them. The Global Student Challenge creates opportunities for students to network with others, gain perspectives, build relationships with new learning partners in a literacy-rich learning environment. Experiencing social media as a powerful platform for learning and establish a positive digital footprint.
Should smartphones be banned in school? Topic: financial literacy, the importance of early days.
So those are the topics from last year. And next week on November 19th, I think I put in a little PSA in there for it. But next week they're talking about innovation, right? So I have this group of students and how do we use social media differently and how do we engage in conversations with others? And because I was involved in this and I was doing my master's, I decided to move from doing coursework to doing a research report. And it ended up being essentially a thesis, but I only got credit for a report. What I did was do a deep dive into our global student chat. And I looked specifically at how are our students in this chat, how are they exemplifying leadership? What are they doing online that is different perhaps than the average student who doesn't have this mentorship experience? So I was looking at how do adults mentor students and what impact does that have? And from that, I sort of developed something called the LEAD framework because I noticed that all of our students were learning and sharing learning through our chat, as well as sort of as an extension on their own social media accounts beyond that. They always sort of looked at the perspective of others. We have a student from Abu Dhabi, we have a student from India, we have students from Alaska, we have students from Canada, and we have a couple that join us from time to time from the US. So there's always that sense of perspective taking and empathy. They are aware of how social media works. They use social media, they don't let it use them. And they were digital role models for other students. So that's kind of the way I now sort of approach everything, right? So how do I as a teacher use LEAD? Like, how do I engage in leadership? How am I learning and sharing learning? How do I show empathy and perspective? How am I aware of what's going on with my social media feeds and how I use it and how it's impacting me? How am I aware of privacy? As teachers, we need to be aware of privacy and ethics and equity and all the things that I guess you're talking about or have been talking about today. And then how can I as a teacher be a role model for my students, and how can I bring in student role models for them? So I had the opportunity as a teacher librarian to work with our career studies classes. So they brought me in every time, and they're like, could you do a digital footprint lesson? I'm like, of course I can. And I always used to start with this question. I had like a 4 corners, and then I had to get rid of this question because the question was, when using social media or other online networking tools, it's important to realize that your online persona will shape others' opinions and perceptions of you, both personally and professionally. And so the 4 corners is the kids would go to, agree or strongly agree or disagree or strongly disagree. And the whole room would move to either strongly agree or agree, which is kind of doesn't serve the purpose of a 4 corners. So kids were getting the message about, understanding that their online presence matters. But realistically, I feel like what we continue to do, and I mean, I don't know what conversations you've had around this, but this idea that we're always telling kids what not to do rather than kind of showing them what they can and should do, right? So I made sure that in that career studies class, we talked a little bit about, what can you do? And some of that will come up in the presentation today. Now, I realize this is Ontario. But whenever we're talking about technology and social media, and I thought this was relevant because it makes reference to the Canada Supreme Court that says that a teacher's off-duty conduct, even when not directly related to students, is relevant to their suitability to teach, and that we must maintain a professionalism at all times in our personal and professional lives. So even those personal accounts, right? You know, I'm having courageous conversations with my friends about, please take that off, because even though it was fun for us to be together and going out and dancing, I don't feel like that's an appropriate picture for you to post on your account, just in case any of my students see it. So really thinking about private and professional, that's something that has to permeate all of the decisions that we make around what this is going to be. But one of the things I began to realize really quickly, and I'm sure you know this, right? But it's one of the things we talk to students about, is that your experience of social media is going to be impacted by who you follow and what you spend time watching. There are some platforms like Twitter, right? Or like TikTok that we don't know how the algorithm works exactly, but for the most part, in my experience, I have always had really positive interactions online because I only follow educators, people probably who are like-minded, but also educators from around the world who might have a different perspective from me. But I know that has changed my own experience of social media. And so when I talk to teachers, one of the things I tell my own teachers, or I bring in as often as I can, is what are those organizations? And these are Ontario organizations, but the Ontario Association for Mathematics Education, the National Council for Teachers of English, the Science Teachers Association of Ontario, the Ontario Modern Language Teachers. When you're following these accounts, and maybe the algorithm doesn't show you them, but seeking them out to see what's new with math, with OAMI, what's new with the National Council of Teachers, and then bringing that, again, all of this is for us, but I will then bring it in and say, I saw, you know, this posting from the National of Teachers. Let's talk about etymology for a second. I thought this was a really great example, so that I'd love to bring these examples into my classroom, because I don't know how many kids are using social media beyond entertainment. And honestly, my husband only uses social media for entertainment, right? Not saying it's a bad thing, just saying that it changes your experience when you change who you follow and why you're on there. Now, that's not to say that we don't, you know, look at anything posted. So this was the history teachers, and they were posting something about a lesson. I have to, you know, put my critical literacy lens on and say, who's putting this out here? What's their agenda? Is this a credible source? Whose voice is missing, right? These are the things I need to do as a professional, as an educator, but it's also what I want my students to be able to do. So bringing in sources from online is something that I did in every class whenever I was co-teaching, as often as possible. And then I made sure to cite that I got it on Twitter, or then X, and they shared this resource. And that was September 23rd. So they are still posting. Some of these organizations are still using Twitter. And I know I'm part of the Canadian Library Association board, and we're using Twitter as well. So again, it's about finding where they are. Once upon a time, the PLN, Professional Learning Network, was something that I know changed my teaching practice. That has changed. And so this was a link. If you go to that link, and I'm going to share this presentation with you in case you're interested, but people from around, educators from around the world, I have connected with educators from around the world who have taught me so much about so many things, who've given me their valuable perspectives. And it was life-changing, transformational for me as a teacher. My question is, where do we go for that now, right? Because I still believe that it's a very powerful thing to be able to connect with educators across the world. Because when we do that, I was able to then come into my class and say, actually, you know, I know a teacher in Malaysia and a teacher in Vancouver, and they're willing to give us feedback on our design thinking projects. just like that. And the kids were like, how do you know teacher from? Like, cause I met them online and, we have, right? So it's these are powerful connections that you can have if you're following the right people online. So I just did a quick look, those of you that are on Facebook, who may want to check out some of these Saskatchewan groups. So you could say, I mean, you could hate everything that Facebook stands for, but there are some very, very powerful groups online. Now, groups don't work in the same way that your own Facebook account. So buy and sell, I can't remember who said something about buy and sell. That's like a group, right? So you choose whether or not anything you post in a group, anything you look at a group goes onto your major timeline. So you could be on Facebook for personal reasons for your family, which is what I am on Facebook for, but then you could belong to these other groups. And again, you're going to be discerning. So am I going to go to the Saskatchewan K-3 teachers private group with only 44 members? If I'm a K-3 teacher, maybe you want to look at their community guidelines. You want to sort of see what they're posting, and you could leave at any time. But more likely, you might want to go to the Saskatchewan Teachers Resources and Idea Exchange, which has 7,000 members and posts approximately twice a day. So if you're stuck on something and you need advice, here you have these people that are there, readily available usually, and super friendly to be able to offer support, opinions, etc. For teachers, by teachers is a little bit bigger and broader. And there's a grade 6 teachers. And that was, again, just a very, very preliminary look. Facebook pages, thank you for sharing that. Facebook pages are there as well. Usually they're disseminating information. Groups are a little bit more interactive, but I did give you a link there on how groups work. If you're interested in taking a look at that. Most of the groups that I'm a part of have very strict community guidelines. So for example, I blog, I have a website. I would never really be able to share anything from my blog unless it's like a resource directly helping somebody, right? So there's very little overall, and if if there's toxicity, usually those people get removed. So, Dean, maybe I might change your mind, but it is a good space for educators, because again, you could be very targeted about what groups you join, and why you want them, right? LinkedIn, Dean and I agree, is not fun. A lot of educators have moved there, but I can't say that I have learned very much from educators on LinkedIn. It's just like, yeah, you're not even fun on LinkedIn, Dean. We've established that, right? Threads and Instagram, there is a growing community of educators on Threads, but your Threads account and your Instagram account are in right now still very, very linked. So if I ever decide I'm going to get a Threads account and then I decide I want to delete it, you're also deleting your Instagram account. So be very careful about jumping in there. And also I find the Threads algorithm, I'm not really getting a lot of people that I follow necessarily on Threads. Having said that, I seek out people and I put in education as a hashtag just to see, and I'll follow some really great people there as well. I look at what they see, I unfollow who I don't want, etc. I am part of the ISTE ASD community, and though you kind of have to be a member, they have a connect space that doesn't require membership. It just requires registration. And it has an AI group. It has a digital citizenship group. It has a library group. It has a science group, like you name it. There are a ton of groups. It's a little bit more closed. It does have a platform for, it has an app as well as a web-based platform. And there are lots of really, really great people on there sharing, and it's a great place to ask a question and get an answer for. Again, think about the why, right? You've been doing media literacy. Ultimately, they want you to get a membership. You're going to get so invested. So there is a reason why they have that, but it is also a really great space. for me, I also like, I really enjoy Edutopia. I was able to write one article for them. So I understand sort of their vetting process a little bit, and they're on all the things. So there could be like EdWeek or Edutopia. I'm not sure what other publications you talk about here, but you know, they're on all the things. So just wherever you are, follow that thing, right? And I thought I got a chuckle out of this. Usually they have really good things. They're never really negative or toxic. Today a spider was hanging from the ceiling and my students noticed, but it continued to take notes and pay attention to my presentation. That's how amazing I am at classroom management. I'm kidding. It was absolute chaos. Students screamed until I caught it. And it was, I'm teaching a classroom management course at Lakehead University. I was just about to go and I was like, perfect, gold. I'm going to start my class with this. Where I have been spending more of my time has been on Blue Sky. And Blue Sky, what I really like about them is it's open source. It's the beginning where Twitter was a long time ago, this idea that we could share ideas and that you could follow whatever, there's no algorithm. You follow exactly who you want to follow. And there's a growing number of educators there, and you would just use the hashtag EduSky. And then I just put a link to start here. So before we sort of talk about bad TikTok things, why am I sharing all these, right? I feel like it is not possible for us as educators to be able to talk about what kids can and should do online if we don't have that experience, right? If our experience of social media is exactly what their experience of social media is, which is just entertainment, funny cat videos, whatever the case may be, then we don't know what we don't know, right? Whereas I feel like my stance on helping students to see how they can use social media positively and productively is directly connected to the fact that I use social media positively and productively, if that makes sense. That's not to say that there isn't some really bad stuff, right? Like, so I was, as Dean said, I just retired, and Devious Licks was a TikTok challenge that, like, our boys' bathrooms were closed for weeks on end because we had kids who were watching the TikTok challenges and wrecking our boys' bathrooms, right? Our Take It Off challenge, like, that's the last thing you want your kid to be able to see, like, that side of TikTok. As we know with their algorithm, like, the minute you spend even like a millisecond on a video, you suddenly get it on your feed. But one of the remarkable things that I've noticed is, like, we on the regular use recipes that we get on TikTok in our family, right? And I talk to kids about that. As a teacher librarian, my readership has increased as a result of kids being on Book Talk, and they would come in and ask for books and start reading. And I thought that was kind of amazing. And then I'm on Book Talk. And so what I mean by that is, like, you're on different sides of TikTok. Those of you that are on TikTok, I know there were a couple of you, you're on a different side of TikTok, right? Depending on what's happening. So many of my kids, when I was really concerned about those Devious Licks challenges and the vandalism, they didn't even know what I was talking about because they weren't seeing any of that on their feed, right? They were seeing something completely different. So in my careers class, I used the CBS Unstoppable account because it talked about different jobs that you can have when you're outside. So whenever possible, I bring that in to the context of my class. I ask my kids what their dream job is and who they're following right now that connects to their dream job, and what universities they're following online, because it doesn't occur to them to do that. And I think that's an important thing to think about. I have always strongly advocated for a class social media account, and I think I still do, even with the changing landscape. Again, there are a couple of really important factors here. And I did write an article for Edutopia, but it was quite a few years ago. I might have to blog about what I would do differently. But essentially, it's sharing with parents who are probably on Instagram anyway, why you would want to engage in that platform at all. Sharing the why with parents is really, really important. Then deciding on a frequency or a form and a platform. Again, I would only go where your parents are anyway, because you have to think about equity. There are so many things, like you could co-create norms with your kids, and there are so many things that you could model in that class social media account that you couldn't do otherwise, right? So the misconception is, well, I have a class social media account now, I'm gonna wreck everyone's privacy. No, you would have freedom of information, but you also don't need to post a kid's face. You could post the provocative question that we were looking at today, so that when kids, when parents see your social media account, they're able to say, hey, I saw that question, or I saw you guys growing this cocoon. I mean, you have a chrysalis. That's so cool. Tell me more about that, right? There is still value in that, but I recognize here in Ontario, we're not allowed to have access to social media on our district accounts. So any teachers who still do have social media accounts for their classes, and there still are a ton, they're either using their own data or they're doing it like as soon as they get home. But every kid in my high school, regardless of that rule, had a VPN and had access to social media. My friend Melissa does a really nice job. She does mystery Zooms, so she leverages her own connections and Zooms with classes from all 52 states and beyond. She has them do a 20 questions, so they have to guess where I am in the world. And it's the cutest thing when they finally get to Canada. They really don't think of Canada, but it takes them a while, and then they finally get to Canada and they're so excited. And what I really love about this is that we're modeling for kids what good strangers look like, right? What connections look like, what it means to connect with another class, and sometimes, I would send them a book, or they would send me letters, and it just becomes a really cute, it extends into a cute pen pal situation. There was a teacher at my school a couple of years ago. He just cold called. He just found people online and said, hey, would you like to come in and talk to my class? And in the same way that Dean leveraged his connection with me to bring me in tonight, he got Honorable Gina Gustin to come to our school virtually. It's like, what? That's amazing. And it was just about, again, following people, asking them. These are just some of the Post-it notes that kids, remember I told you that, I leveraged my own connections to get kids to get other classes from around the world to give them feedback on their projects. This is what kids took away, like how much they really enjoyed getting feedback from people around the world. It wasn't really something that they were used to, they thought they could even do. Like how many times they working with people from around the world. Cool to get feedback from Malaysia. I learned a lot and enjoyed the freedom to be creative. The global read aloud, it just was over, but you could do that anytime. Like there's a Facebook group for connecting readers. And often for me, this has morphed into, and they all have their freedom of information form, and they have given me permission to share this with you. But this became a really cool experience because we not only connected over a book, but then it was this class in Sweden, and they sent us their Swedish candies, and we sent them Canadian candy, and then it was postcard. Like it became a really, really cute opportunity to connect beyond just what that book was, which I thought was awesome. Whenever I can, I look for opportunities for my kids. Like I see something online and I go, oh, friends, I saw this online, and I'd love for us to create birthday cards for Gerard, who's turning 80, who had a rough year. We could always do with some doses of kindness. So I'm always on the lookout for opportunities for my kids to demonstrate kindness online or in person that becomes online. And I just always try to err on the side of empathy, multiple perspectives, positivity, and openness. This is still from Ontario College of Teachers, but obviously when we go online, we're not going to accept students as friends on our accounts. I never do. And I don't even accept the parents as friends because I don't necessarily want to see what you're doing, but I invite them to tag us if they're doing something that's connected to what we were doing or reading or whatever the case may be. That gives me the control of sharing it if I like or want. And just parameters around being appropriate, and all of that is in there. So always keeping interactions, no matter where you are online, professional, as you would in the classroom, to build a positive online presence. No one respect proper professional boundaries with students, even when they initiate interactions. And as I said before, this has meant a lot of courageous conversations, even in my own circle of friends. Like, please don't post that. That is not okay. I think we need to, as teachers, just like students need to be aware of algorithms and how they impact our feed. One of the things I've started to notice a lot, and I don't know if it's because I looked at one and thought it was funny, but you look at one thing and you think it's funny, and then suddenly you're down this rabbit hole of some really negative teacher talk, right? And teaching is hard, right? And there are comedians who now have left the teaching profession and have these incredible stand-up routines based on their experiences in the classroom. And as much as they could be funny, I think that when we have then some, like, we start to get into murky waters with some really negative stuff. And then sometimes we don't even realize we're doing that and sharing that. And so I think we owe it to our kids to recognize when we are when our algorithm is impacting our ability to stay positive about with students in front of us. So that needs to be said. So I guess the question is, how would a parent or student perceive what you post, repost, or like? That's kind of how I gauge it now. Now I do have a public account. Many of you have personal accounts, but my Facebook is personal. I'm still super, super careful. That's obviously a duplicate slide. Our kids, I think it's in the next thing. TikTok is not a search engine, but it is for teens. And so often, we talk about credible news sources. I'm a teacher librarian, and I start with TikTok, to be honest with you, because I know that's where they start with. And then I teach them how to do lateral reading versus vertical reading, which I'm sure you've touched upon in this class, in media literacy. But that for many of them, they just don't know how to do that. It doesn't occur to them. So starting where they are is where I like to use technology and social media. And then I protect my own self. And then as a result, I know how to give students advice on how to protect them. Now, I'm a middle-aged, white woman who, I know I could let people go if I feel like it's impacting my my mental health and well-being. If I'm feeling like I'm comparing myself to these other people and it's impacting me, I'm going to let them go. Kids don't do that. So, saying I had to unfollow somebody yesterday, and those are the conversations I bring up all the time with kids, because what we say actually does matter to them. They are like, look at this. You see the level of emulating? Is that the word? What is happening here? I think it is not watching Tom and Jerry. I don't even know, you're too young to watch Tom and Jerry. But the theory of observational learning by Albert Bandura says that we learn from the observations of others. We learn our values, we learn lessons. And so what we do is really, really powerful. And that's why I also love to bring in young people who are doing remarkable things. Because let's face it, when I was young, because I'm older than you, I never had the opportunities that some of our students have to have their voice be heard. It's kind of incredible. So this is an example of a young girl who I follow on Instagram, who is an activist at 17 years old. I've been following Joshua since he was really young. I met him online when he was the keynote speaker, and I was just, a random panelist. He has just done so many incredible things. And I'd like to show this, not to say, oh, you're in grade 10 and look at what Joshua's done, but just to show them the potential, the things that they can do today that I've never been able to do. And also to show them kids who are doing positive things online. This is another example, Chloe Thompson, Chloe Cares. Again, I've been following her for a long time too. And she began making toiletry bags for the homeless people in her community, has since been to Ghana, and always posts really positive things. And this is my latest discovery. She is on Instagram, and it's her name is Eve. Let's make a difference. And she started the account because she wants to have a voice, and she wants to use it was selected mute, and she uses sign language in order to communicate. And she thought, for anyone else who's like me, I'm going to teach you how to use sign language. And it's just such a powerful account. So again, whenever I can share, I do. And so just to wrap it up so we can have a bit of a conversation, how do your values reflect who you follow, what you post, what's on your feed? How can you use social media to help you rather than distract you? Because teaching is hard and we can use all the help we can get. And what do you think about this? That connected students need connected teachers and leaders, and that there has been, in my experience, this let's move away from technology and social media. Even though the statistics say that our kids are still using it, they're using it at younger ages and they're using it with increased frequency. They're still connected, but we're increasingly disconnected. I'm wondering if we are anyway. So that's it. I'd love to have a conversation now. I'll stop sharing. And I don't even know, Dean, if that's what you were hoping for. That's just what I did.
That's great. No. I mean, again, I'm very curious because again, as I think about the privilege advantage I have to, like, you're not here. If I don't have that, you're not here today. All the guests I have basically don't show up. And it's more than just that. I mean, I feel that particularly in Saskatchewan and places that, with rural communities, that it's really hard to you might be the only second, third, and fourth grade teacher in your school, never mind the only second grade teacher. And so, yeah, that's not to say you can't get support from others, but your choice is limited. But online, it's not limited. And what we've seen, both good and bad, is people finding community online in good ways and bad ways. It just happens. That's just an inherent human desire and need that we have, is to belong. And why not find a way to belong to a community of like-minded educators? And like, it's thrilling. My own experience, when I was just even working in technology, I was really the only one in the division that was doing that. So just even having connections of people that were doing things that I hadn't even thought of around, was like, wow, okay, that's a brilliant idea. And then they could help you with that. They weren't just, it was just an idea you read in a book somewhere. With people that were actively sharing and were help. And the number of times I would bring in, people into meetings just randomly on Skype to share an idea.
Well, and even now with AI being so prevalent, I feel like everyone's talking about AI. One of the things I do is I make sure to seek out the advocates for AI and the people who are completely against it, right? Because what we don't want to happen either is, when we're building these communities, that we then create these filter bubbles for ourselves. Like I need to know that what these tough questions are. And maybe I'm not even, it's not occurring to me, but then I'm following Michael Freeman, who has, some really, really pointed questions for me that I have to go back and think about. That's what I want too in my feed, right? I want a little bit of dissonance.
Well, and then what I can say is that as an educator, because it's in my domain of expertise, I feel like I have found those people that are my trusted sources. And so when you expand that out to other areas where I don't have as much domain expertise, it's harder to, so I do, to your point, look for dissenting ideas, whether it's political things that I go, I don't really know about this, but I'm hearing kind of a couple sides. So that's helping me, but I haven't built up enough domain expertise to be able to feel confident. But in education, I know things. And so I hear people that go like, no, this person that resonates with me. And when they say something or when they share something, I know it's of quality. And so that's really, really comforting in those areas. you know,
Mhm. I think you and I differ. Like, I literally do not follow anything political. Like, I absolutely stay away. And judge me if you like, but so my experiences have always been positive because I've never been down those. Like, it's hard enough to go to Thanksgiving dinner with my sister.
I don't listen, I don't judge anybody because there's only so many things in the world you can care about. You can't care about everything. You
True.
cannot. You should give
True.
yourself a break when you just say, yeah,
Yeah.
it's not gonna be something I'm not gonna
Mhm.
life is short. We have a limited amount of time on this earth to know
Mhm.
all the things cannot be. So choose the things that matter to you that you want to spend time with and be able to do that. But I wonder if anybody else got curious with some questions for Jennifer or get her thoughts on some issues. I think especially as you know, as we sort of broach that idea of how do we model for kids, like what are we telling our students? And again, our whole course has been around this idea of digital citizenship and how do we do that. And there's always a lot of caution, but I'm curious to know if anybody has a question for Jennifer about her experience and how that might compare to yours.
I wanted to share just around the privacy piece. Like, kids don't readily think about freedom of information, private, like anything like that, right? So I ran the student council for many years at our school, and they would constantly like put other kids on the story, the Instagram story for, and I was like, that's not okay, guys. What do you mean that's not okay? Well, we need a freedom of information, or can you do it from behind, or whatever. And that was a lot of upfront, like sort of modeling and reinforcing on my part. But in any given high school, I don't know what if you teach elementary or high school, but in any given high school, I know at our high school, we had dozens and dozens of accounts that kids were running. And so they were really learning how to use social media professionally by doing this, right? Like, technically, I was supposed to always press send, which I did mostly, but they were creating the content. And so, that, or a culture of a consent, like I would say, a kid read a book and they loved it. And I was like, are you comfortable with me taking, or could I just show you flipping through the pages of the book and give me a post-it note of what you want and what song would you like? So I was able to capture their voice and their ideas, but never their face, right? And I think the culture of consent is super, super important, especially as kids are young and growing up, like being able to say, I'm going to take a picture of this. Is that okay? Or, that sort of thing. Or I'm not going to use this picture because this is just, something that I want to remember, whatever. We're just going to post so we can show our parents during parent-teacher interview, but we're not going to share it anywhere. Those kinds of conversations are conversations that you can have when you have a class social media account or when you're running an account for a team or whatever the case may be. You always have to be careful, like, because I would always say, well, what about the kids who don't have Instagram, right? Like equity, right? You're not going to create you're not going to create a class Instagram account where half your class the parents don't have Instagram. Why would you do that, right? So that's another thing sort of I probably didn't mention that I wanted to mention around that.
I've got a question. So I've got, I did a survey a few weeks back, just asking my staff how comfortable they were, with digital literacy and AI and that kind of stuff. I think we've got about 15 staff members. I think I got 6 responses from this survey, which was a little disappointing. But one of the responses was, can't stand it, don't like social media, burn it to the ground, all that kind of stuff. And then I thought I knew who the teacher was. So I talked to that teacher to get a little more, about his background about it. He ended up telling me that like he doesn't have a smartphone. He got rid of his smartphone just to get an old flip phone. Like he's just, I'm done with it. It's just, it's garbage. And so when you just made that comment about connected students need connected teachers and leaders, I think about him and what we're going to try to do with AI and this digital literacy. I can see that teacher being, I want nothing to do with this. So how do you get those type of teachers on board even just a little bit?
That is a really good question. One of the things that I always start with a personal story. And I'm going to share this with you now. When my parents were moving, they had like this big pile of boxes in the garage. And I said, like, Mom, I need to label these so that when the movers come, they'll put it in rooms for you. And they said, okay, fine. Well, when I went to go read the top of the box, I realized that I couldn't read it. It was illegible, completely illegible. And I started to cry. And the reason I started to cry was because I realized that my parents were basically illiterate, that I had forgotten that because I had taught my mom how to use Siri. And Siri actually allows her to have a voice and communicate with me. So I guess my biggest concern is, my wondering always is, how do I get our teachers to understand that there are lots of negatives to social media? And I think right now, everywhere, if you've read The Anxious Generation, he's saying, get rid of all social media forever because it's the worst. Like we've sort of, it's the reason everything is falling apart in the world, right? And there's some truth to that. But there are so many kids for whom technology has given a voice. AI, it can be really awful. There's bias, there's all that, but it also, from a teacher perspective, has saved me hours in terms of productivity, being able to brainstorm things. So understand where that teacher is coming from. It probably is this, is that teacher feeling overly connected, like wasting time with social media, or right, that technology has had a negative impact on their family. There are so many families that are fighting about, get off your phone and, screen time. Like that is a reality, right? So recognizing that that is happening, but also that we can't, like, we're graduating students into a tech-rich world, and that we need to be able to help them use it positively and productively. So even just the question, so how do you think then that we can support our students who are graduating into this tech-rich world if we're not using tech? Like, are we doing them a disservice? And having courageous conversations about that. And very quickly you'll learn that, maybe the home life is awful because, or the person is not productive, or whatever the case may be. But I think we need to engage in those conversations, right? That it's one thing to get it on a survey, but then to have a frank conversation with staff about, what about these kids who need it? Right? Like my mother, without technology, would not function in the world, but you would talk to her and you would think she's really smart, because she is really smart, right? And we see this too often, that we're going to the extreme where we're doing paper pen everything because we're worried that AI is going to, cause our kids to cheat. But then the kid who can't really, like my husband, God love him, but he can't spell to save his life. Like his first letter, I'm surprised we're still married, because his first letters to me, like I couldn't even read them, right? But now he's great because he uses technology, and that's the reality. I'm not sure if I answered that question well, but I really do think it's courageous conversations. Okay. How can we encourage students to rely on their own critical thinking skills instead of defaulting? Yeah, that is so today on Blue Sky, I saw the best example of this. And I can't remember who it was. Jen Roberts, her name is. And she did an activity with her kids, because it's all about like showing them. We can tell them all we want, right? Like how we can say, don't do this, or that you should do this, but it's when we show them that it really makes an impact. So what she did was, she saw a teacher had come to her and said this was AI generated. So she got the passage that was AI generated, and then she got 2 other passages, and she gave it to the students and said, let's take a look at this. And what would you give it? So she made it seem like they were going to evaluate the papers together. And then the student said, oh, okay, but this one isn't very good. And then she said, actually, I didn't give you this to evaluate the paper. I wanted to see if you could see which one of these was AI generated. And the kids said, all of them said, well, this one. And so she said, so if you can tell that that's AI generated, do you think I can? And so I thought, what a powerful activity. They went, oh, right. And then the thing that I always did, walking around, because kids had ChatGPT up all the time, and so we were like, how do you create an AI resistant paper, whatever the case may be? I would always say, tell me how that's helping you to learn, or is that stopping you from learning? Right? Like engaging in that conversation right at the beginning of the year. Like AI exists, I get it, but it's gonna stop your learning, or it's going to help your learning. If you can prove to me that it's helping you to learn, then you can use it. So give me some examples. And some of the examples that they used were actually pretty provocative. Like one student said, I take my essay, I put it in there, and then I ask for it to provide me with 2 alternative perspectives on what I might be, whose voice might be missing in my paper. And I said, well, okay, that's really interesting. Do you show your teacher that then? And then she said, well, no, because I'm not allowed to use AI. I'm like, well, but, so we had that conversation. So it's conversations that I'm having with teachers about how can you start with AI and then, but that would be in older grades. In younger grades, I would say it's going to break down your learning no matter what, because you have to have the foundations. So I would engage in design thinking, for example. You can't really use AI for that, right? Like you can't, like it's in the moment brainstorming, you're solving a problem. If you do use AI, it's to be able to support certain things. But honestly, I'm at the point where I'm still working through all of this, right? From the time I left the classroom to now that I'm teaching pre-service teachers, it becomes so much better. There was one of the things I always used to do is prove it wrong. Like, here's a cue chart, ask it questions, prove it wrong. And then, we'll get together once you've proven it wrong so that they can see that there are errors. And there are a ton of things where they've seen errors, but I think it's until that we have those conversations about, is this breaking down, or is this supporting learning, or is it stopping learning? And really have them be metacognitive about that. It's really the only way that it's gonna make a difference. Maybe, I don't know. I would love to hear what you have to say, Dean, or anyone else about that, because I'm still figuring it out, if I'm gonna be honest. Yeah.
We're playing that game in this course. We're trying to figure out AI.
Yeah.
So they've got free reign to use it, but they got to be transparent. And I use it, so I'm trying to be transparent when I use it. And we're trying to figure this out together. A little different though. I mean,
Yeah,
we're
'cause
adults
we're
here. We can
adults,
have that
right?
conversation. It
Yeah.
might be a little different when you're talking to a 14-year-old or
Yeah, so
something
in
of
my
that nature.
Yeah, in my grade 9 classes, I always said, like, is this okay? So we talked about what academic honesty is. Like, if you just copy and paste a prompt, is this okay? And they all agreed it was no. But it was amazing to see, and maybe I'll add it to the slides, that I have a template for it. But it was always amazing to see what a discrepancy there was between, okay, what about if you let it create your outline for you? And then you create the essay. Is that okay? And then the teacher would say, well, no. But the students would say, yeah, like some of the students said yes, and some of them said no. So at the end of the day, one of the things that I did with my teachers was we have a conversation about what is going to be okay here and what is not going to be okay. And we make sure that AI is part of that conversation and that we're all transparent about it. I don't know how else you could do it when we live in a world where AI exists. And I remember a math my friend, her daughter was the only one in the class who didn't use AI, and she knew that everyone used AI, and she got a lower mark, and she was like, how is this fair? And so they had a conversation with the teacher, and the teacher finally said, okay, well, maybe the outline, like, I have to address this a little bit differently. Like, any teacher who is not coming from the assumption that kids are going to use it, you're kind of fooling yourself. Even when now, I don't know if in Saskatchewan, but here in Ontario, when I Google something, the AI overview comes up first, and it's not even right half the time. right? So it's just everywhere.
Well, I think again, it points to the need, not just the AI, but what you shared today about what is our obligation. And it's tough, right? Because I don't tell teachers, well, you should be on social media because your kids are on social media. That's not necessarily the right response, but you do have to have some understanding of it beyond just, I chose not to be on it because I don't want to, which again, that's a healthy choice.
Yeah, it is.
I wouldn't try to discourage anything, but that's not necessarily a helpful stance for students who are using it and trying to figure it out. So I think in my mind, I'm always I like talking to students, like, tell me how you're using it. Like, what do you find useful about it? Like, even just getting them to be metacognitive about the experience. And yeah, it's tough, but some of them will already acknowledge that can be toxic, that it can be addictive, that, I mean, adults get that when they do that, and they're, kind of smack themselves in the head when they, hopefully we do. I do it. I know when I'm kind of, gee whiz, I've spent like an hour here. I didn't need, that was a waste of time.
Yeah.
Like you catch yourself in that moment.
100%.
And I think students just need to know that adults kind of have their back and understand that, yeah, it's kind of a wild thing.
Mhm.
And we want to help you with it, as opposed to just saying, oh, stay off that, like drugs are bad. Like, yeah, that's great, but help me understand this world. And to also, like, so I had Mike Ribble on, one of my first guests,
Okay.
asking about, like, because you and I both had, and you shared some already, but we have all these stories of young people doing amazing things with social media. And I think there still probably are there. That number maybe is shrinking. I don't know.
Yes.
And it's being overshadowed by all the negative. But, for a kid that wants to be, I don't know, an entrepreneur or use it, like, it is undoubtedly the best way if you have any kind of an entrepreneurial spirit in you, trying to understand the world and try to position yourself with an idea you have, or a skill, a talent, whatever it is. It's very difficult to do it without social media.
Yeah.
Better figure it out. So maybe we're privileged that we don't have to be on social media.
True. All right, I am going to let you go because we're watching.
Thank you so much.
With the stars. Thank you.
You said you'd share your slides with us?
I will. I'll share
Post
my
them?
slides.
That'd be great, because there's some links in there I think may be useful to check out. But
Okay, for sure.
Thank you,
care,
Jennifer.
everyone. Reach out at any time. I'd love to continue to be on this journey with you and answer questions. Figure it all out. Good luck.
Take good care. Bye now. All right. So we'll take a little bit of a break. I think today Taylor's the only one that's going to do a content catalyst, and she's gonna take as long as she needs, or as little as she needs, so that she's not going to necessarily go the full time, but she'll come back and share, and then I'm gonna just do a few housekeeping things, and then we could be out of here a little bit earlier today. So it is 8:02. So let's 8:10 gather back, take a little break.
Makes
On
things
a Rocketbook. But yeah, because I've done it in the past too, where I've uploaded it to notes and things like that, because it does do OCR, it does the reading and translate, but Rocketbook's a little more intuitive of a tool. So yeah, well, hope it works out for you, because I think it's cool. All right, Taylor, you're a lone ranger today, so you don't have to be rushed by time. Take as much or little time as you need, and I'll pass it to you.
Okay. So I am going to share my screen here. Alicia, can you see my screen? Awesome. Okay, so this week, I presented about using AI, but specifically using AI and the ethics and morals behind using it. I know we have a lot of AI tools in our toolkit, I guess, that we can use in the education realm, but I specifically focused this week on Chat GPT. So, I'm just curious here, how many people? No, I can't see anybody. Hold on. Oh my goodness. Oh, there we go. How many people think that AI is actually quite frightening? Raise of hands. Yeah. So when we listened to that podcast about Joe Rogan, that really opened up my mind into all the capabilities that AI has, especially Chat GPT, this new version. And like we've been talking about in the course, AI can only get better from here. This is the worst it's going to be. And I wanted to look at what that might look like in our educational context as more students use it and as we as teachers use it more. I thought it was really actually kind of nice that we started with Jennifer Casa Todd, because she talked a little bit about this as well, which was already a part of my presentation. So kind of one of my guiding questions this week was, are we robbing ourselves of a valuable learning opportunity? So using ChatGPT to sort of discover an outcome or come to a solution can be fine and dandy, but are we losing the learning opportunity in the process? So here's what we're going to do. We're going to get into groups. They're going to be smaller groups, and I want you to discuss whether AI like ChatGPT can help or hinder that critical thinking aspect. I know Alicia had asked a question about that too. So it kind of is all coming together at this point. Whether it hinders or helps critical thinking, and whether it might lead to too much of a reliance on technology over that personal effort aspect. I have a couple of guiding questions here in case your conversation needs it. Things like, does ChatGPT make learning easier, or does it reduce the need for deeper understanding? And how can educators ensure that AI is used to enhance learning rather than just replace it completely? So I'm going to put this presentation in the chat so that you have the guiding questions ready for you. There we go. Okay, so let me just share this. It's a really long link, apologies. And now I'm going to make groups. This is the thing that I always loved watching people do, is how to make the groups. And now I have to do this. Am I oh, now I am. That was all. Okay, where do I find the group thing? Maybe someone. Breakout room. Okay. All right. Should be good to go.
So as soon as you hit close all rooms, that gives everybody a minute.
Okay.
When you want people back, that's what you do.
Are you just gonna like jump in and out of rooms?
Yeah.
Yeah,
That's
that's
what
what
I
I
need.
wanted to do too. I wanted to hear the conversation. All right, welcome back, everybody. I think most people are back now. I was catching some really good conversation that was happening. Some heated discussions, some portion of a chat where they were talking about chat GPT loop, so to speak, which I thought was really cool too. Now comes the time where we share what we talked about. And if you don't want to share, then, or if you want to do it the fun way, I have made a wheel of names. And if it lands in your name, then you're the lucky winner and you get to share what your group talked about. So unless we have volunteers, we can do the wheel, up to you.
Wheel.
Why not?
I don't, yeah, just do it. It'll be more fun.
All right, spin that wheel. Wheel of death, what Kelsey says. All right, who's our lucky winner? Da, 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 da. Brittany. All right, now I think I just realized maybe you couldn't have seen that wheel, did you?
Oh, I was just going to say, I think it's rigged because it started on my name and then it spun around and came back to
Oh,
my
you did
name.
see the wheel.
Yeah, we saw the
Okay,
wheel.
good. Good. Well, you're the lucky winner.
Yay. We were talking about, I'm using Magic School with my English classes right now, and you can actually like launch a student room and you can track what kind of prompts they're putting into the AI and what they're asking it. And I put in a prompt to sort of start the process and then they can edit it a little bit. But it tracks everything that they ask so that I can go in and then see, hey, like what did they ask it to do? What did they use it for? So we did that for the planning process. And then they had to do the rough draft on their own. They're going to type it up and I'm going to get them to plug it back in and ask for edits. But in like directing how they're using it, they know that I'm tracking it. And then I know what they get back when they plug something in and ask for feedback at the end, right? So I'm actually expecting more from them because I know what it can do for them.
Yeah, totally. I love that idea. I actually want to try that now. I wrote it down because I think
It's
that's
really cool.
Do you give your students any sort of like guidelines or like gentle nudges in the right direction to use AI better if you notice that they're maybe not putting in the right prompts?
Yeah, and we walked through a sample to start and just kind of looked at, depending what you ask it, right? It's going to give you a little help or a lot of help.
Totally.
So we went through a few different examples of this is what you can ask it and this is what it does for you.
That's really cool. That's really cool. I had our tech guy that works in our division always says about AI, whatever you put into AI is what you'll get out of it. So if you put in something really detailed, really thorough, very explicit, you'll get that in return. And if you give something very vague, it might give you totally the wrong thing.
Yeah.
Awesome. Thanks, Brittany. Somebody else want to share or do we want to spin the wheel? I feel like the wheel
Off of that
Oh, yes.
magic school thing. I tried that last year too, Brittany, and I would have them use like I would launch just the proofreader tool for them, and then I would have them make their first round of edits right on their rough draft. And it was kind of funny because my logic behind it was I could sit here and circle their spelling mistakes. They're gonna get this final paper back and throw it in the trash, or I can have them do that first round. And it was funny, some of my students would pull me aside and go, Mrs. Peak, I'm really bad at spelling. Okay, what words are you spelling wrong? Like, let's dive into this more. And at the end of the day, it saved me hours. I could focus more on like the content than the grammar and spelling. And I felt like the kids got a lot more out of it that way too.
For those using the Magic School, are you using the free version?
That's what I was going to ask. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
I had the paid version. I used my PD to buy it, but I have no PD left, so I'm going to be letting go of that soon.
Would you say it was worth it, Jenny, or did you notice much of a difference?
I don't know. I got it a year ago, so I feel like I might have missed how much the free one has grown.
Okay.
I only have the free version, and I haven't run into anything yet where it's like, no, you can't do that. You have to pay for it or whatever.
I'm working with a school district. Well, it's actually Chris Kennedy that was here last week. His district has Magic School, and they garnered a pretty sweet deal. Like I think it's like $3 a kid, which is I don't know. I think it's like double that in terms of their sort of sticker price. But I think I like, Brittany, I like that idea just in the sense that you are in that playground with them so that you really can help them think through and then process that. So it's not this sort of nebulous way in which they're using it. And so I think there's a real value in kind of doing that together and thinking it through. But
That's really cool. Okay, I'm gonna spin the wheel again because why not? Want to see what we come up with. If it lands on Brittany again, then we'll know for sure it's rigged. Kelsey, would you mind sharing a little bit about what you guys talked about?
Sure, but I was in Brittany's group, so
Oh, lol.
so I really do think this wheel is rigged.
Ah, we can
Um,
skip. We can skip.
well, I was just gonna add that I made a volleyball tournament schedule last week using AI after I spent hours trying to make it myself. And I figured out that I started with putting in prompts, and it took me about 11 tries to finally figure out a detailed enough prompt to get what I wanted. And I think that it made me actually think, what is it that I'm trying to do? What is it? Why can't I do it by myself? What is it that I'm just not wrapping my head around? But then even the next morning, after I finally got one to work, or so I thought, the next morning, me and my grade sixes ended up having to make a new one. So we ended up resorting back to AI, and I showed them, I said, this is the prompt I'm putting in. Do we think that we're going to get what we need? And so it was a really good opportunity for them to see, like, oh my gosh, a teacher's using AI, and this is a good prompt, and here we go.
Yeah, that's really cool. I love that. Okay, well, maybe go once, maybe one or two more. We'll see how the conversation goes. Chris, tell me you're in a different group.
I am in a different group, so you're
Are you
you're
willing
good.
to share a little bit about what you guys talked about?
Yeah, you bet.
Sweet.
So I think the critical thinking part of it, I think, was an interesting concept of like trying to understand like does it hinder, does it enhance critical thinking? What does that process look like? And I think some of it is really conditional on the student first coming in of what those skills are that they already have. So it's like, can they take the prompts or can they take the information that's given to them and then apply it to where that is? And then I think from there, like we talked even about as a teacher, how do you then ensure like that enhances their learning? I think it's like, are your assessments or are you asking them what they're to do, like something that they can just punch in and get an answer from GPT, or are we looking at something maybe a little higher up or something that's like maybe reflecting on their own personal experiences and what that could be? So yeah, I think it just kind of was a little bit more personalized in saying like it's not maybe one size fits all with these critical thinking skills because we all have different backgrounds, but how does that then impact where we take students are and how we get them a little bit higher? So
Yeah, that was sweet. Yeah, I just was thinking about I teach an EAL caseload this year, so I don't really have a classroom. I have a bunch of students that are learning English as another language, and even just like the academic language, if anyone's familiar with the BICS and the CALP, but going from that basic communication language to actually really in more intense academic language needed for high school or university, and to use ChatGPT to understand that, but also for students that are using it as sort of a cop-out, like they wouldn't even maybe understand some of what they're needing to put in about what would come out. Like I could see a student with really strong academic language getting a very different answer from ChatGPT compared to somebody that maybe doesn't have some of those skills. So that just what you were saying, Chris, kind of reminded me of that. And I thought that was kind of cool connection. Cool. I think I'm gonna call it there because maybe we can end a little early and I'm looking out for the group. But also I feel like our conversations have been good and I want to thank everyone for participating and hopefully my single stands and single presentation thing was okay with everybody. So yeah, that's me. I'm done.
Thanks, Taylor. Thank you. Yeah, always good. I love the specifically people sharing out their insights, and I know that you do. Teachers are notorious for not valuing their own learning that they're doing in the classroom, thinking, well, it's not worth sharing. But I do appreciate the fact that you get vulnerable and you say, like, I tried this, again, and it doesn't have to be something that you change the world, it's disaster, whatever. It can just be in the, I don't really know if this is a thing yet. Andrea shared about, making a scavenger hunt with their kindergarten students, and just kind of like the idea behind it and the thinking that you're becoming aware of just gives you more confidence as you think about the purposeful use of we're talking about AI a lot, I know that, but any technology or any kind of pedagogy, there's just so many things that we do. I know I forget his name. He's a higher ed professor, and he asks his faculty, and I think this is a good thing for all of us to do, to go through their courses in their syllabus. And I mean, again, you can do this for any assignment that you're doing. And if the words "because I said so" are the only justifications for you doing a thing, maybe it's not a good thing to do. "Because I said so" isn't great. I mean, this is easily falls onto the plates of the math teachers who constantly get the when will I ever use this question. And some have figured out ways to respond to that. That's I think reasonable. Others are still kind of "because I said so," because you need it for the next grade, or you'll need this when you go somewhere else, which to me was about the lamest answer I could get. Like, really? So it has no purpose. It's just to keep the hoops going. Okay, I get it. Those are the situations where you're going to be seeing people seeking to use these tools simply for compliance, just to get it done. And like, I get it. It's hard to make every part of school not just to get it done. But surely we can create more opportunities where kids aren't just trying to get it done. They really do want to learn, and they're open to whatever way is going to help them, whether that's using technology or not. They want to do that. I think that's our goal, is to make most of what are learning not "because I said so," but because they want to. Again, I'm idealistic, and I even understand in this course there's things that you do it's "because I said so," and I hate it. I hate that's why you do it. And I know there's times where you feel that compliance piece around this, and it's something I struggle with because I don't ever want that, but I also understand, I don't know how sometimes it's just the way that it is. So anyway, just before you go, I just wanted to follow up on the emails that I sent last week, and I know that I did it for some, but I think I might not have been clear with everyone that for those responses that I gave, and for some of you I didn't send you one because we had a one-on-one conversation, so it didn't necessarily need it, but everybody else I think should have got something. If you didn't from me and you're looking for something, please let me know. But I used AI for it, and I was transparent with, I think, most people. And then I thought, I probably didn't say that at the beginning. And I also want, again, you don't have to answer it now. It could be something that you send to me, a DM, an email, or anything. Is like, I want to know if that felt like I was cheating. Like, if you felt like I was cheating because of it. And if, because when I read through the recommendations, like, it was like, oh crap, I would never have suggested that. And then there were a couple in there that I wasn't even sure. I don't know if this is something useful for him, but I'm going to leave it in because it was all kind of, maybe this is a thing, right? I didn't necessarily think all of them. And I'm sure that of all the suggestions, it wasn't the idea, okay, I got to do everything according to this. They were things to get you thinking. But I think about that in terms of you know, what is that role? Because you're gonna be come up with the same kind of things if you're using AI, right? It's gonna be giving you prompts and things, feedback that you can give to your students, and I just want to know that. So if somebody says, yeah, it bothered me when you did it, it didn't feel genuine, I really do want to know that to kind of understand my own use of it. Again, I don't think I took anybody's verbatim. I put in something of my own, at least into everybody's that I thought was specific to them. But that's just me being transparent to say, like, hey, if that, and again, I don't take offense if somebody said, yeah, I didn't really like it or didn't find it useful, whatever. That's from my learning too. So just wanted to make sure that people had a heads up with that. All right, so with that, we'll wrap. Yeah, get a little early. I have I'm not I'm not traveling, but I have a 4 a.m. airport run that I have to do tomorrow. So all of my kids, well, 3 of my daughters who live in Moose Jaw are all going to Taylor Swift this week, and they're all going on different flights. How that worked, I don't know. I wasn't responsible, but I apparently am responsible for driving them to the airport. So the first one leaves tomorrow at whatever. So I want to get to bed a little earlier tonight. All right, with that, we'll see you next week. Our guest will be Dr. Bonnie Stewart from the University of Windsor. I'll share information about her so you can be prepped on her and her stuff. And yeah, take care.